Would you like to have colonies of shrimp like this? Or even like this? If so, hit that subscribe button and check out this series. Hello everyone and welcome back. I did a video before called Shrimp Keeping Basics Part 1, and this video is going to be Shrimp Keeping Basics Part 2. In the first video I went over substrate and the kind of aquarium that you want to have for the type of shrimp you're keeping. In this video I wanted to go over lighting and plants. And I also wanted to mention that I run a shrimp group called Canadian Aquarium Shrimp Keepers, Breeders, and Lovers. And I run it with a friend of mine. And we also have a sister group called Canadian Aquarium Shrimp and Plants Buyers and Sellers. And the sister group is sort of designed to help people out in the hobby who are breeding shrimp here in Canada and would like to sell a few shrimp. Because we always try to promote homebred and locally bred shrimp. And the other group is sort of to help anybody out who is new to the hobby and just has any questions that they might have about shrimp keeping, and no question goes unanswered. And it's also for anybody who's really into shrimp keeping and just wants to post some cool pictures of their shrimp. But anyways, let's get into the video and enjoy. I wanted to start off with what kind of plants that I have myself and kind of why I keep them. Now this one here is Java moss, and I think a little bit of Christmas moss got mixed in there at one point, but in my opinion, any moss works. Some do like a little more light than others, but for the most part, they all will grow in low light. But I use this plant for, it's such a slow grower that I don't have to reach my hands in the tank and trim it every, once a week or whatever like I do with some of the other plants that I have. But there is a benefit to having some of those fast-growing plants, and I'll get into that just a little bit later. Over here I have some Sabwassertang, and it is also a slow-growing plant that is kind of equal to moss in its growing rate. And this is another plant that I really don't have to get in there and trim up or take out too often. It is going just a little bit crazy in here, and I do apologize for the reflections, but anybody with a shrimp room or a fish room knows the struggle with that. Over here I have some narrow-leaf Java fern. I have this in just about all of my tanks also. This one here is a crypt of some kind. I'm not sure exactly what kind. And here are my shrimp having a feast. Over here is some Rotala. This is one of my faster growing plants. The reason why I like this so much is because if there happens to be some kind of nitrate spike or ammonia spike, this stuff usually can suck it up pretty fast. I don't know if I've ever read any kind of nitrates or ammonia in any of my tanks when I have this plant in there in particular. And there's also another plant that really works well for sucking up nitrates and ammonia, and that is my floaters, which are duckweed and water lettuce. And these I do have in all of my tanks. Duckweed is a little bit, it's kind of a nuisance sometimes, but I really do think that its benefits really do outweigh its cons. And that's why I tend to keep them in all of my tanks. I don't try to remove all of the duckweed. I will leave a little bit in every single tank. Finding the right light for your aquarium can get a little bit frustrating because it really all depends on what kind of plants that you want to have in that aquarium. And these two tanks up here are 33 gallons, so they're fairly large. I need a lot of light, even for the low light plants, to get some of my plants to grow. Over here I have this is a light that I got off of Amazon. It holds a 23 watt compact fluorescent, and it puts out anywhere between 1800 to 2000 lumens. And lumens is just how bright the light is. I got these they were $14, and I think right now they're on sale for 10 bucks each, but that's on the Canadian side. I don't know what it is anywhere else. And over here, what used to be my favorite lights, these are T5 high output. These are made by Sunblaster, and they sell these in Canada or at your local hydroponics store. You're probably not going to be able to see it on there, but these are they're a fluorescent light that's just a tube shape. But they do put out quite a bit of light. I think these put out probably about 2,500 lumens. But another thing I wanted to talk about before I forget is when you're on Amazon and you're looking at lights, sometimes some of those compact fluorescent lights, they cost like $20 or $30. But if you look at the fine print, they put out just as much lumens, and they're the same color temperature as some really cheap ones you can get at Lowe's. So I've noted, I used to buy the really expensive ones, and I really cannot tell a difference between the Lowe's lights and those expensive lights off Amazon. As far as choosing what kind of light you want as far as LED versus fluorescent, I'm getting pretty good growth over here with my LED light. This is just a Nikru or whatever. I got this off Amazon. I think it was like 40 bucks. But plants are growing pretty well in here, so I can't complain about LED growth. The fluorescent lights are just as good. The only thing that I don't like about fluorescents is, of course, changing the bulbs out probably once a year to every 2 years. They don't seem to last quite that long. But then again, if all I have to do is replace a bulb on these lights versus, the whole LED fixture going out, these light bulbs are about 10 bucks at your local hydroponic store, and this one, of course, I said before, is 40. When it comes to plants, low light versus high light, there is a pretty big difference as far as which ones you can keep in your aquarium, and I like to kind of keep towards my lower light plants when it comes to shrimp tanks. The lower light plants, I said before, you don't have to put your hands in the tank and trim them up all the time. But the downside of having slow growing plants is that they do suck up nitrates and they do suck up ammonia, but they just don't do it as fast as the faster growing plants. And my fast growing plants that I love the most are the rotala, the water lettuce, and the duckweed. Now, if I make a mistake and I overfeed my tanks, or it gets overpopulated with snails, or sometimes I let my tanks go for a couple weeks because I don't have the time to do water changes, I can assure you that 99% of the time, if I come down here and I leave a tank alone for 2 weeks, the water lettuce and duckweed are out of control. And this just tells me that the nitrates are built up and I need to do a water change. I need to also remove some plants because the water lettuce and duckweed, it blocks out the light for the rest of the plants. So if you have your fast growing plants below and you're overrun with water lettuce and duckweed, a lot of those fast growing plants just don't get the light they need, which causes them to either die off or just not grow properly. It's always important to know what kind of plants you're buying, because if you buy a fast growing high light plant and you're using very little light, chances are it's not going to grow the best and it's going to die on you, and it might pollute the tank with ammonia. Now, shrimp do eat plant decay, which is an awesome thing, but they can only eat so much. So if you have a whole plant that's dying off, a lot of the times they can't eat all of that waste. And it turns into ammonia and it causes kind of bad things to happen to your tank. So it's really, really important to know what kind of plants you're buying. Getting into lights a little more, I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget what kind of light is proper for growing plants. Now, when you go to like Lowe's or you look on Amazon, you're going to see a daylight bulb or a cool white, and you're also going to see a warm white. And most of the time the warm white bulbs are 2700 Kelvin or 2700 K. Those are kind of more of a yellow tinge, and they don't grow plants very well, if at all. I've never tried one before. But most of the time when you're shopping for lights, they will say daylight, or they'll give you the Kelvin factor of those lights. And if I was to choose a light for my aquariums, I like to stay between 5000 and 7500 Kelvin. Or just look for the name daylight bulb. Most of the time, any daylight bulb will grow plants okay. And you don't have to get the really, really fancy lights. Like I said, mine are $10 off of Amazon, and I'm growing plants in every one of my tanks using those lights. They work just as good as the more expensive ones. I hope everyone enjoyed this video, and if I left anything out that you have a question about, be sure to leave a comment below. And if you're not subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button, as it really helps me out so I can continue to make videos for everyone. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and cheers.